The screaming started at 3 in the morning. "You're suffocating me, Felix. I can't breathe with you constantly checking on me." Elin's voice cut through our apartment like broken glass, sharp enough to wake the neighbors 2 floors down. I sat up in bed, blinking away sleep, trying to process what had triggered this explosion. All I'd done was ask where she'd been until midnight, a simple question between 2 people who'd been living together for 3 years. Apparently, that made me the villain. "I just wondered if everything was okay," I said, keeping my voice level. Years of dealing with temperamental clients in my tech consulting business had taught me that matching someone's anger only escalates things. "Everything was fine until you started interrogating me." She paced around our bedroom like a caged animal, her designer pajamas somehow still perfectly arranged despite her fury. Even in rage, Elin maintained her image. "I was networking at the Morrison event. You know, actually building my career instead of sitting home writing code all night." The Morrison event. I'd seen the photos on social media. Elin looked stunning in her black cocktail dress, surrounded by the city's elite marketing crowd. What I hadn't seen was any mention of work being discussed. Just champagne, posed photos, and a lot of people who seemed more interested in being seen than actually accomplishing anything. "I wasn't interrogating you. I was worried when—" "There you go again." Worried, checking up, always hovering. "Do you know how embarrassing it is when my friends ask why my boyfriend tracks my every move?" I stared at her, genuinely confused. "Track your moves?" "Elin, I asked one question." She whirled around, her perfectly styled blonde hair catching the moonlight streaming through our floor-to-ceiling windows. Even furious, she looked like she'd stepped out of a magazine. That calculated perfection should have been my first warning sign years ago. "One question tonight. But it's every night, Felix. Where was I? Who was I with? What time will I be home? I'm 28 years old, not some teenager with a curfew." I felt something cold settle in my chest. Not anger exactly, but a kind of crystalline clarity. "So asking if you're safe when you're 3 hours later than you said you'd be makes me controlling?" "Yes! God, yes! Can't you see how suffocating this is?" She gestured wildly at our shared space. "I need room to grow, to explore opportunities, to be my own person." The irony wasn't lost on me. This apartment, with its exposed brick walls and modern fixtures, had been my place before she moved in. I'd rearranged my entire life to accommodate her needs, her schedule, her social climbing ambitions, but somehow I was the one being suffocating. "What exactly are you saying, Elin?" She stopped pacing and looked directly at me for the first time since her tirade began. Her expression was cold, calculated. The mask had slipped, and underneath was someone I barely recognized. "I'm saying I need space. Real space. Time to figure out what I want without someone constantly monitoring my choices." There it was. The conversation every couple dreads, dressed up in the language of personal growth and independence. I'd seen this movie before, heard these exact words from friends whose relationships had imploded. The script was always the same. "How much space are we talking about?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "I think I should stay somewhere else for a while, just until I can sort through my feelings." I nodded slowly, processing not just her words, but the way she said them. Too rehearsed, too polished. This wasn't a spontaneous decision born from tonight's argument. This was a planned exit, and I'd just provided the convenient excuse. "Where will you go?" For just a moment, she hesitated. The first genuine emotion I'd seen from her all night. "I have options. Kira said I could use her guest room, or there's that extended stay hotel downtown." Kira, her best friend and partner in social climbing. The same Kira who'd been encouraging Elin to upgrade her social circle for months. The same Kira who looked at me like I was a temporary inconvenience in Elin's journey to bigger and better things. "Right, Kira's guest room." I swung my legs out of bed and stood up. At 6'2", I had nearly a foot on Elin, but she'd never seemed intimidated by the height difference. If anything, she seemed to enjoy the visual contrast we made at social events. "Don't be like that, Felix. This isn't about you not being enough. It's about me needing to grow." The corporate speak was almost funny. Needing to grow, like she was delivering a performance review instead of ending a 3-year relationship at 3 in the morning. "I understand," I said, and surprisingly, I meant it. Not the official version she was selling, but the real situation underneath. "When do you want to pack?" Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. She blinked, clearly not expecting such easy acceptance. I thought maybe tomorrow, or this weekend. Tonight works better for me." Now she looked genuinely surprised. Felix, it's 3 in the morning. Can't we be adults about this? Adults. Right. Because screaming at your boyfriend for asking about your whereabouts was the height of maturity. I'm being completely adult about this, Elin. You want space? Yeah, I respect that. But if you're leaving, let's not drag it out. I walked to the closet and pulled out her largest suitcase, the expensive one she'd bought for our trip to Europe last year, back when we were still pretending to plan a future together. You're serious. She watched me set the suitcase on the bed. You're actually going to make me pack right now. I'm not making you do anything. I'm helping you get what you said you wanted. For the next hour, we moved through the apartment in careful choreography, packing her belongings with the efficiency of people who'd shared space long enough to know exactly what belonged to whom. She took her designer clothes, her expensive skincare products, her collection of marketing books that I'd never seen her actually read. I helped carry bags to her car, a white BMW that she'd bought after her last promotion. We didn't talk much during the loading process. What was there to say? Felix, she said as she closed the trunk, I want you to know this isn't easy for me either. I almost laughed. Standing there in her designer athleisure wear, about to drive off to whatever new adventure awaited, she looked like someone heading to a spa weekend rather than someone leaving a long-term relationship. I'm sure it's not. She studied my face in the dim parking garage lighting. You're taking this very well. What's the alternative? Beg you to stay? Promise to change? We both know that's not what you want. She had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable. I do care about you, you know. I know you do. And I did know it, in whatever limited way she was capable of caring about anyone other than herself. Drive safe, Elin. She got in her car and rolled down the window. I'll call you in a few days. Maybe we can talk when emotions aren't so high. I nodded and stepped back as she drove away. Her taillights disappeared around the corner, and I was alone in the parking garage at 4:30 in the morning, wearing pajama pants and a t-shirt, watching 3 years of my life drive away in a white BMW. The funny thing was, I felt more relieved than heartbroken. I went back upstairs to our apartment, my apartment now, and looked around. Without Elin's carefully curated decorative touches, the space felt bigger, cleaner, like I could finally breathe properly for the first time in months. I made coffee and sat on my couch, watching the sun come up over the city skyline. My phone buzzed with a text message. Thank you for making this easier than it had to be. E. I stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it without responding. If Elin wanted space, I'd give her more than she'd bargained for. But first, I needed to satisfy my curiosity about something. I opened the location sharing app we'd both installed months ago for convenience. The little dot representing Elin's phone wasn't at Kira's house or at any extended stay hotel downtown. It was at a townhouse in the upscale Riverside district. A townhouse that, according to a quick property search, belonged to Sebastian Lund, investment banker and regular fixture at the same networking events Elin had been attending with increasing frequency. I closed the app and finished my coffee, so that's how it was. Elin wanted space to grow and explore new opportunities. Apparently those opportunities had a name, an address, and a 7-figure income. The relief I'd felt earlier crystallized into something sharper, something that felt almost like gratitude, because now I knew exactly what I was dealing with and I could plan accordingly. I'd built my consulting business by being 3 steps ahead of my clients' needs, anticipating problems before they became crises, and creating solutions that looked effortless but were actually the result of careful planning and execution. Elin thought she was playing chess while I was playing checkers. She was about to discover just how wrong she was. 3 days passed before Elin called. I was in my office reviewing code for a client's security system upgrade when her name appeared on my phone screen. I let it ring 4 times before answering. Hello, Elin? Hi. Her voice had that carefully modulated tone she used for difficult conversations. How are you doing? I'm fine. Busy with work. How's Kira's guest room treating you? A pause, just long enough to confirm what I already knew. It's fine. Comfortable. Listen, I was wondering if we could meet for coffee, talk through some things. What kind of things? Well, there are some practical matters we need to discuss. The lease, shared accounts, that sort of thing. Practical matters. Right. More likely she was testing the waters to see if I'd discovered her real living situation. Sure. When did you have in mind? How about tomorrow afternoon? That place on 5th Street you like? The coffee shop where we'd had our first date. Either she was being sentimental or she was trying to manipulate me with shared memories. Given recent evidence, I was betting on manipulation. Tomorrow works. 2 o'clock? Perfect. And Felix? Thank you for being so understanding about all this. After she hung up, I leaned back in my chair and considered my options. I could confront her about Sebastian Lund directly, but that would show my hand too early. Better to let her think she was controlling the narrative while I gathered more information. I called Maya Rodriguez, my best freelance developer, and someone who'd helped me navigate more than one tricky client situation. Maya had a talent for finding information that people preferred to keep private, all through perfectly legal channels. "Felix, how's life treating you?" Maya's voice was cheerful, as always. "Could be better. I need a favor." "The personal kind or the professional kind?" "Bit of both. I need background information on someone. Sebastian Lund, investment banker, lives in Riverside." "Ooh, this sounds juicy. What kind of background?" "Everything you can find through public records, business dealings, social media, property ownership, anything that might be interesting. Give me 24 hours. The usual rate? Double it. And Maya, discretion is important on this one." "When am I ever indiscreet?" "Don't answer that. I'll have something for you tomorrow morning." That evening, I drove past Sebastian's townhouse. It was exactly the kind of place Elin would love. Modern, expensive, and positioned perfectly for maximum social impact. The white BMW in the driveway confirmed my suspicions. I didn't stop or linger, just gathered intelligence and moved on. The next morning, Maya called with her report. "Your boy Sebastian is interesting," she said without preamble. "Successful on paper, but there are some cracks in the foundation." "What kind of cracks?" "The expensive kind. He's leveraged to the hilt on that townhouse, drives a lease car that costs more than most people's annual salary, and his social media suggests a lifestyle that's probably stretching his budget thin." "Anything else?" "He's got a business partner, Derek Morrison. They run a small investment firm together, mostly handling money for local wealthy families. Clean reputation so far, but they're definitely spending a lot on maintaining appearances." "Morrison." The same name as the networking event where Elin had been the night of our argument. "Send me everything you found, and Maya, keep digging. I want to know more about the business partnership and their client base." "You got it. But Felix, be careful. Whatever you're planning, make sure it's worth the potential consequences." I appreciated Maya's concern, but she didn't understand the full situation yet. This wasn't about petty revenge. This was about truth and consequences. At 2 o'clock, I walked into the coffee shop on 5th Street. Elin was already there, sitting at our old table by the window. She looked perfect, as always. Designer jeans, cashmere sweater, makeup applied with professional precision. "You look good," she said as I sat down. "Rested." "I've been sleeping better lately." It was true. The apartment felt more peaceful without the constant tension of wondering what Elin was really thinking or planning. She ordered her usual complicated latte. I stuck with black coffee. "So," she said once we'd settled in, "I wanted to talk about the practical stuff. The lease is in your name, so that's straightforward, but we have the joint checking account for shared expenses." "Already handled. I moved the money to my personal account and closed the joint one. The bank said they'd send you a final statement." She blinked. "Oh, that was efficient?" "Seemed like the right thing to do. Clean break? No complications?" "Right. Clean." She stirred her latte absently. "What about the security deposit on the apartment?" "I contributed to that." "I'll write you a check today." "You don't have to do that immediately. I know money might be tight with just your income covering rent." I almost smiled. Elin had never paid much attention to my business finances. If she had, she'd know that my consulting firm had been growing steadily for the past 2 years. The apartment rent was well within my budget. "It's not a problem. I prefer to keep things simple." She nodded, but I could see her trying to read my expression. This wasn't going the way she'd expected. "Felix, I want you to know that I hope we can stay friends. What we had was real, even if the timing wasn't right for something more serious." The timing wasn't right. Another carefully crafted phrase that meant absolutely nothing. "I'm sure we'll run into each other around the city," I said neutrally. "Of course. The marketing world is pretty connected to tech these days." She paused. "Actually, I've been thinking about starting my own agency. Getting away from the corporate structure, building something more creative. That sounds ambitious. I've been getting advice from some people in the investment community. There's a lot of opportunity for the right kind of boutique firm." Investment community. She was practically handing me information about her new relationship. "Well, I hope it works out for you." We finished our coffee with small talk about mutual acquaintances and city events. Elin seemed increasingly uncomfortable with my calm demeanor. I could see her trying to provoke some kind of emotional reaction, but I kept my responses pleasant and neutral. As we prepared to leave, she touched my arm. "Felix, are you sure you're okay with all this? You seem Different. Different how? I don't know. Distant, I guess, like you've already moved on. I looked at her carefully. 3 days ago, she'd been screaming about needing space and independence. Now she seemed bothered by the possibility that I might actually give her what she'd asked for. Isn't that what you wanted? For both of us to move forward? Yes, but... She trailed off, apparently realizing that anything else she said would contradict her own stated goals. I should get back to work, I said. I'll drop that check by Kira's place tomorrow. Actually, I'm not staying there anymore. I found a temporary situation that's working better for me. Oh? Where should I send the check? Another pause. You can just mail it to my office. That's probably easier. I nodded and stood up. Take care of yourself, Elin. She looked like she wanted to say something else, but I was already walking away. That evening, Maya called with more information about Sebastian and his business partner. This gets more interesting, she said. Derek Morrison is the money behind their investment firm, but Sebastian handles most of the client relations. They've been growing fast, maybe too fast. What do you mean? They're taking on clients with bigger portfolios than their track record really supports. It's a high-risk, high-reward strategy. It's working for now, but if they hit a rough patch, they'd be in trouble. Exactly, and there's something else. Sebastian's been very active on social media lately, posting about networking events and business opportunities, lots of photos with potential clients. Including marketing executives? How did you guess? He's been cultivating relationships with several local marketing firms. Looks like he's trying to expand into representing creative agencies and media companies. The pieces were falling into place. Elin hadn't just found a new boyfriend, she'd found a potential business partner who could fund her agency dreams, and Sebastian had found someone with connections in a market he wanted to penetrate. It was a mutually beneficial arrangement disguised as romance. Very practical, very calculated, and very typical of both of them. Maya, I need you to keep monitoring their social media and any public business filings, and see if you can find out more about Derek Morrison's background. You're building quite a dossier here. What's the end game? I looked out my apartment window at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Elin was probably having dinner with Sebastian, planning their future while rewriting the history of our relationship to make herself look better. I'm just making sure I understand what I'm dealing with. Uh-huh. Just remember, the best revenge is living well. Who said anything about revenge? I'm just being thorough. Maya laughed. Right. Well, be thoroughly careful, okay? After she hung up, I sat in my quiet apartment and made a list of everything I knew. Elin's new relationship, Sebastian's financial situation, their potential business partnership, and the network of people surrounding them. Information was power, and I was accumulating plenty of both. 2 weeks later, I was having lunch with Oscar Chen, a former private investigator who'd become a friend after I'd helped him set up security systems for his consulting business. Oscar had 30 years of experience reading people and situations, and he'd become something of a mentor to me in understanding the darker aspects of human nature. So your ex-girlfriend is shacking up with an overextended investment banker who's trying to break into her industry, Oscar summarized after I'd filled him in on the situation. And you're gathering intelligence because I want to understand what I was really dealing with for 3 years. Oscar raised an eyebrow. Felix, I've seen a lot of people tell themselves that story, usually right before they do something they'll regret. I'm not planning anything dramatic. I just don't like being played for a fool. Fair enough. But let me give you some advice from someone who's seen this movie before. The best way to win this kind of game is not to play it at all. I appreciated Oscar's wisdom, but he didn't have all the facts yet. That morning, I'd received an interesting piece of information from Maya. Sebastian's investment firm had been making inquiries about acquiring or partnering with marketing agencies, specifically agencies that specialized in tech industry clients, my clients. What if they're not content to just leave me behind? I asked. What if they're planning to interfere with my business? Oscar's expression sharpened. What kind of interference? I pulled out my phone and showed him the screenshots Maya had sent. Social media posts from Sebastian's business partner, Derek, talking about expanding into disruptive tech marketing and leveraging cross-industry synergies. Corporate speak that essentially meant they were looking to poach clients from established tech consultants like me. This could be coincidence, Oscar said, but his tone suggested he didn't believe it. Could be, but Elin knows my client base, my pricing structure, and my business development strategy. She's also got a grudge against me for not fighting harder to keep her. You think she's feeding information to her new boyfriend? I think she's a practical person who sees an opportunity to solve 2 problems at once. Get revenge on me for not being devastated by our breakup, and help Sebastian expand his business into a lucrative market. Oscar was quiet for a moment, studying the information on my phone. What do you want to do about it? I want to make sure they understand that targeting my business would be a mistake. And how do you plan to communicate that message? I smiled, very carefully and completely legally. That afternoon, I called 3 of my biggest clients and scheduled meetings to discuss expanding our service agreements. I also reached out to 2 potential clients I'd been courting for months and offered them pilot programs at significantly reduced rates. If Sebastian and Elin were planning to make a play for my business, they'd find the market much more locked up than they expected. But I didn't stop there. I also started making some strategic social media posts of my own, highlighting successful projects and satisfied clients. Nothing boastful or unprofessional, just a subtle reminder of my reputation and track record in the local tech community. Maya called me that evening with an update. "Your timing is interesting," she said. "Sebastian just posted about a new marketing partnership his firm is developing. No details, but the language suggests they're planning something big." "What kind of language?" "Disrupting traditional client-consultant relationships and bringing innovative marketing strategies to underserved tech companies." Sound familiar? It sounded like my business model, described in the kind of buzzword-heavy language that Sebastian's crowd loved. "Anything else?" "Derek Morrison has been reaching out to several local tech companies, offering free consultations on optimizing their marketing spend. 3 of those companies are on your client list." I felt a cold anger settle in my chest. This wasn't coincidence or paranoia. This was a coordinated effort to undermine my business, and Elin was almost certainly providing the intelligence that made it possible. "Maya, I need you to do something for me." "I'm listening." "I want you to create a comprehensive portfolio of my work over the past 3 years. Client testimonials, project outcomes, industry recognition, everything that demonstrates my track record and reputation." "Planning to pitch new clients?" "Something like that. I also want you to research Sebastian's investment track record, not just the public success stories, but any clients who might have had less positive experiences. That might take some digging. Take whatever time you need. And Maya, start documenting everything we find. Screenshots, public records, social media posts. I want a complete picture of their business practices." "You're building a case." "I'm protecting my business." The next morning, I received a call from one of my oldest clients, Jennifer Walsh, who ran a successful app development company. "Felix, I need to ask you about something," she said without preamble. "I got a call yesterday from someone at Morrison Lund Investments. They're offering marketing consulting services and claimed they could provide better results than my current consultant." "What did you tell them?" "I told them I was very happy with my current arrangement, but they were pretty persistent. They seemed to know a lot about my business and my current marketing spend." Too much, I was willing to bet. Information that would have come from someone with inside knowledge of my client relationships. "Jennifer, I want you to know that I've never shared details about your business with anyone outside my team. If someone has specific information about your marketing budget or strategies, they didn't get it from me. I didn't think they had. That's why I'm calling." The whole conversation felt off, like they were trying to create problems with our relationship rather than offering genuine solutions. "I appreciate you letting me know. If they contact you again, would you mind documenting what they say?" "Of course. Felix, is there something I should be worried about?" "Just some competitors who are playing a little fast and loose with business ethics. Nothing you need to be concerned about." After Jennifer hung up, I called Oscar. "They're making their move," I told him. "Direct contact with my clients, using inside information about my business relationships." "That's a serious escalation. What's your response?" "I'm going to make sure my clients understand exactly who they're dealing with." "Carefully, Felix. Don't do anything that could backfire on you professionally." "Don't worry, I'm not planning to get my hands dirty." That afternoon, I drove to Sebastian's townhouse, not to confront him, but to observe. I parked across the street and watched the house for an hour, noting the expensive cars in the driveway, the perfectly maintained landscaping, and the general aura of success that Sebastian worked so hard to project. A lifestyle that, according to Maya's research, was funded largely by debt and the need to maintain appearances for potential clients. As I was preparing to leave, I saw Elin's BMW pull into the driveway. She got out carrying shopping bags from high-end stores, looking every inch the successful marketing executive. Sebastian emerged from the house to help her carry her purchases, and they kissed before heading inside together. They looked happy, successful, like they were winning. That was about to change. I drove home and called Maya. "I need you to accelerate your research on Morrison Lund Investments. Specifically, I want to know about any clients who might have complaints about their service or results." "Already on it. I found 3 former clients who left negative reviews on business rating sites before the reviews mysteriously disappeared. I managed to capture screenshots before they vanished. What kind of complaints? Overpromising on returns, high-pressure sales tactics, and poor communication once contracts were signed. One client claimed they lost money on investments that Sebastian had guaranteed were virtually risk-free. Can you get me contact information for those clients? Probably. What are you planning? I'm planning to make sure potential clients have access to complete information when making their decisions. Felix, don't worry, Maya. I'm not going to do anything unethical. I'm just going to make sure the truth has a chance to compete with the marketing spin. That evening, I drafted a detailed email to my client base, not attacking Sebastian or Elin directly, but providing information about protecting themselves from predatory business practices. I included general warning signs of companies that might try to exploit existing business relationships, and I offered to provide references from satisfied clients to anyone who requested them. I also created a simple website documenting my track record and client testimonials. Nothing flashy, just a professional presentation of facts and results. If Sebastian and Elin wanted to compete for my clients, they were welcome to try. But they'd be competing against my actual track record, not the fantasy version of my business they were selling to potential clients. I hit send on the email and leaned back in my chair. The game was officially underway. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. We need to talk. E. I stared at the message for a moment, then deleted it without responding. If Elin wanted to talk, she knew where to find me. But our conversation would happen on my terms, not hers. The confrontation came 3 days later, but not in the way I expected. I was leaving my office building around 7 in the evening when I saw Sebastian waiting by my car. He was dressed in his typical investment banker uniform, expensive suit, polished shoes, and the kind of confident posture that came from never having been seriously challenged in his life. Felix roared. He extended his hand like we were meeting at a networking event. Sebastian Lund. I think we have some mutual acquaintances. I didn't shake his hand. What can I do for you, Sebastian? His smile faltered slightly, but he recovered quickly. I was hoping we could have a conversation, clear the air about some misunderstandings. What misunderstandings? Well, it seems like there might be some confusion about my firm's business development activities. I've heard that some people think we're targeting your clients specifically. Are you? Not at all. We're simply expanding our service offerings to include marketing consulting. It's a natural evolution for an investment firm. I studied his face. Sebastian was smooth, I'd give him that. But there was something desperate underneath the polished exterior. The kind of desperation that came from living beyond your means and needing to constantly generate new revenue to maintain your lifestyle. And the fact that you're contacting companies I already work with is just coincidence? The tech industry is a small community. There's bound to be some overlap. Right. And I suppose Elin's insights into my business practices have nothing to do with your sudden interest in tech marketing. Now his mask slipped completely. The friendly businessman disappeared, replaced by someone much less pleasant. Look, Felix, I don't know what your problem is, but you need to understand something. Business is competitive. If you can't handle competition, maybe you should consider a different line of work. I can handle competition just fine. What I don't appreciate is people using inside information to target my clients. Inside information? Sebastian laughed, but it sounded forced. You mean basic market research? Sorry, but client lists aren't exactly state secrets. No, but specific budget information and strategic plans are. Sebastian's expression hardened. I think you're paranoid, and I think you're having trouble accepting that Elin has moved on to better things. There it was. The real motivation underneath all the business justification? Better things, I repeated. Is that what you call a relationship built on mutual opportunism? What the hell is that supposed to mean? It means I know exactly what you both are, Sebastian. Elin needs funding and connections for her agency dreams. You need access to the tech marketing world. It's a business arrangement with benefits. Sebastian stepped closer, trying to use his height to intimidate me. Unfortunately for him, I was still taller, and I'd grown up in a rougher neighborhood than his suburban privilege had prepared him for. You're bitter because she chose someone who can actually provide for her, he said. Someone who's going somewhere in life. I almost laughed. Someone who's leveraged to the eyeballs on a townhouse he can't afford, driving a leased car and desperately trying to expand his client base because his current income can't support his lifestyle? The color drained from Sebastian's face. How do you know about your financial situation? Same way I know about your former clients who left negative reviews that mysteriously disappeared. Same way I know about Derek Morrison's family money that's keeping your firm afloat. Sebastian's hands clenched into fists. For a moment, I thought he might actually try to hit me. Instead, he took a step back and tried to regain his composure. You've been investigating me. I've been protecting my business from people who think they can use inside information to steal my clients. This isn't over, Sebastian said, his voice low and threatening. No, it's not. But Sebastian, next time you want to have this conversation, make sure you understand who you're dealing with. I got in my car and drove away, leaving him standing in the parking lot. In my rearview mirror, I could see him pulling out his phone, probably calling Elin to report on our encounter. That evening, my phone rang. Elin's number. Hello, Elin. What the hell do you think you're doing? Her voice was sharp with anger, all pretense of civility abandoned. I'm protecting my business, the same business you're helping Sebastian target. I'm not helping him do anything. His firm's expansion has nothing to do with me. Right, and I suppose you've never mentioned my clients or my business model in casual conversation. Silence on the other end of the line. Elin, look, maybe I shared some general information about the tech consulting market, but that's not the same as providing inside intelligence to help your boyfriend steal my clients? He's not trying to steal your clients. He's building his own business, using information you gave him about my business relationships. Another pause. When she spoke again, her tone had shifted from angry to calculating. Felix, I think you're overreacting. Competition is normal in business. If your clients are happy with your service, they won't be interested in alternatives. You're right. They won't be, especially once they understand exactly what kind of alternatives they're being offered. What does that mean? It means Sebastian's track record with previous clients is about to become much more widely known. You can't what? Share publicly available information about business practices and client satisfaction? I'm pretty sure I can. Felix, don't do something you'll regret. This doesn't have to become ugly. You're right, it doesn't. All you and Sebastian have to do is stop targeting my clients and focus on building your own legitimate business relationships. And if we don't, then you'll discover that I'm much better at this game than either of you realized. I hung up before she could respond. The next morning, I published a blog post on my business website about protecting yourself from predatory business practices in the tech consulting world. I didn't mention Sebastian or Morrison Lund Investments by name, but I provided detailed descriptions of warning signs that potential clients should watch for, including high-pressure sales tactics, promises of guaranteed results, and attempts to exploit existing business relationships. I also included links to several business rating websites where potential clients could research the track records of any firm they were considering. Within hours, my phone was ringing with calls from clients thanking me for the information and asking questions about how to verify the credentials of other service providers. Maya called me that afternoon. Your blog post is getting a lot of attention, she said. It's been shared on several tech industry forums, and someone posted it in the local business networking group on social media. Good. Information should be freely available. Sebastian's not going to be happy about this. Sebastian should have thought about that before he decided to target my clients using inside information. Felix, I'm worried about how far this might escalate. These people have money and connections. They could make trouble for you. Let them try. I've got something they don't have. What's that? The truth. That evening, I received a text from an unknown number. This is Derek Morrison. We need to meet. Tomorrow, 2 p.m., Riverside Coffee. Come alone. I showed the message to Oscar when I called to update him on the situation. Don't go, he said immediately. Nothing good comes from meetings like that. I'm not afraid of Derek Morrison. It's not about fear, Felix. It's about strategy. Meeting with him gives them a chance to control the narrative and potentially manipulate you into saying something you'll regret. Or it gives me a chance to understand exactly what I'm dealing with. And what if it's a setup? What if they're planning to record the conversation or provoke you into making threats? I hadn't considered that possibility, but Oscar was right to be cautious. What do you suggest? If you're determined to meet with him, do it in a public place with witnesses. Bring someone with you, even if you sit at separate tables, and whatever you do, don't let them provoke you into saying anything that could be used against you later. You think they're that calculating? Felix, these people have already shown they're willing to use inside information and pressure tactics to get what they want. Don't underestimate what they might do if they feel cornered. I thought about Oscar's advice as I drafted my response to Derek's text. Riverside Coffee works, 2 p.m., but I'll be bringing a colleague. The response came back immediately. Fine, but this stays between us. We'll see, I typed back and hit send. The game was about to get much more interesting. Derek Morrison was exactly what I'd expected. Mid-40s, expensive suit, the kind of confidence that came from inherited wealth and private school connections. He was sitting at a corner table when Maya and I arrived at Riverside Coffee, looking like he owned the place. Maya took a table across the room with her laptop, playing the role of a freelancer catching up on work, close enough to observe, far enough away to maintain plausible deniability. Felix roared, Derek said as I approached his table. He didn't stand up or offer to shake hands. Thank you for coming. I sat down across from him. What did you want to discuss, Derek? I think you know exactly what we need to discuss. He leaned back in his chair, studying me like I was a problem he needed to solve. This situation with Sebastian and your ex-girlfriend has gotten out of hand. Has it? I wasn't aware there was a situation. Derek smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Come on, Felix, we're both adults here. You've been conducting what amounts to a harassment campaign against my business partner and his girlfriend. Harassment? I've been protecting my business from competitors who are using unethical tactics. Unethical tactics. Derek repeated the phrase like it tasted bad. You mean competing for the same clients you work with? I mean using inside information obtained through personal relationships to target specific businesses and clients. That's a serious accusation. I hope you have evidence to back it up. I pulled out my phone and opened the folder of screenshots Maya had compiled. 3 of your partners' contact attempts with my clients included specific details about their current marketing budgets and strategies, information that's not publicly available. Derek glanced at the screenshots, but didn't seem surprised by their contents. Business intelligence gathering is standard practice in competitive markets. Not when the intelligence comes from pillow talk with someone's ex-girlfriend. Now Derek's expression hardened. You need to be very careful about the accusations you make, Felix. Defamation is a serious legal matter. So is tortious interference with business relationships. We stared at each other across the table. Derek was trying to intimidate me with legal threats, but I'd done my homework. Everything I'd done so far was completely legal and defensible. What do you want? Derek asked finally. I want you and Sebastian to stop targeting my clients. Focus on building your own legitimate business relationships instead of trying to steal mine. And if we don't? Then I'll continue to make sure potential clients have access to complete information about your firm's track record and business practices. Derek leaned forward. Let me explain something to you, Felix. Sebastian and I have been building relationships in this city for years. We have connections you can't imagine, clients who trust our judgment, and resources you can't compete with. Resources like Derek Morrison's family trust fund? His face flushed slightly. My background is irrelevant to this conversation. Is it? Because from where I sit, it looks like you're using inherited money to fund a lifestyle and business model that can't sustain itself through actual performance. You don't know what you're talking about. I pulled out another set of documents Maya had compiled. Morrison Lund Investments has been operating for 3 years. Your total client base is 47 individuals and small businesses. Your average client portfolio is significantly smaller than what you claim in your marketing materials. Derek's eyes narrowed as he scanned the documents. How did you get this information? Public business filings, tax records, and social media analysis. All perfectly legal sources. This is harassment. This is due diligence. The same kind of research any potential client should do before trusting someone with their money. Derek sat back in his chair, and I could see him recalculating his approach. The intimidation tactics weren't working, and now he knew I had detailed information about his business operations. What do you really want, Felix? Money? A cut of our expansion into tech marketing? Name your price. I want you to leave my clients alone and stop using inside information to target my business. And if we agree to that, then we go our separate ways and pretend this conversation never happened. Derek was quiet for a moment, considering his options. I'll need to discuss this with Sebastian. You do that, but Derek, make sure he understands that this is the only reasonable offer he's going to get. Is that a threat? It's a statement of fact. Right now, this is a private business dispute, but if you continue to target my clients using unethical tactics, I'll make sure every potential client in the city knows about your firm's business practices. Derek stood up abruptly. This isn't over. It could be. That's entirely up to you and Sebastian. After Derek left, Maya joined me at the table. Well, that was intense, she said. How do you think it went? Better than I expected. Derek's used to intimidating people with money and connections, but he's not used to dealing with someone who's done their homework. Do you think they'll back off? Honestly, no. Derek's pride is wounded, and Sebastian's too desperate for new revenue streams. They'll probably try to escalate. What's your next move? I looked out the window at the upscale neighborhood surrounding the coffee shop. Somewhere nearby was Sebastian's townhouse, where he and Elin were probably planning their next move in this increasingly complicated game. I'm going to make sure I'm ready for whatever they try next. That evening, I called Oscar to update him on the meeting. Derek Morrison offered to buy you off, Oscar said after I'd filled him in. That tells me they're more worried about your information than they're letting on. That's what I figured. People don't offer bribes unless they think they have something to hide. What's your next step? I'm going to start reaching out to their current clients. Not to interfere with their business relationships, but to make sure those clients know they have options if they're not satisfied with their current service. That's a dangerous game, Felix. You could end up looking like you're the one using predatory tactics. Not if I'm careful about how I approach it. I'm not going to badmouth Morrison Lund directly. I'm just going to make myself available as an alternative resource. And how are you planning to identify their clients? Maya's been tracking their social media activity and business networking events. We've got a pretty good list of people they've been cultivating relationships with. Oscar was quiet for a moment. Felix, I want you to think carefully about how far you're willing to take this. Once you start actively competing for their clients, there's no going back to a simple business dispute. They crossed that line when they started targeting my clients with inside information. I know, but I also know that revenge has a way of consuming the people who pursue it. Make sure you're not becoming something you don't want to be. I appreciated Oscar's concern, but he didn't understand the full scope of what Elin and Sebastian had tried to do to my business. This wasn't about revenge. It was about justice and consequences. That night, I drafted a series of emails to potential clients who'd been approached by Morrison Lund Investments. Not attacking Sebastian or Derek directly, but offering my services as an alternative and providing references from satisfied clients. I also updated my business website with more detailed case studies and client testimonials, making sure potential clients could easily verify my track record and reputation. If Derek and Sebastian wanted to compete for clients, they were welcome to try, but they'd be competing against my actual results, not the fantasy version they were selling. My phone buzzed with a text message from Elin. We need to talk. This has gone too far. I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, I agree. It never should have started. Can we meet tomorrow? Just the two of us? Why? Because I want to end this before someone gets hurt. I almost laughed. Now she was concerned about people getting hurt after helping Sebastian target my business for weeks. I'll think about it, I typed back. But I'd already made my decision. If Elin wanted to talk, she could come to my office during business hours. No more private meetings, no more opportunities for manipulation. The game had evolved beyond personal relationships. Now it was purely business, and I intended to win. The next morning brought an unexpected development. Jennifer Walsh, my app development client, called with disturbing news. Felix, I need to tell you about another contact from Morrison Lund, she said. This time they didn't just call, they showed up at my office. Sebastian came to your office? Both of them, Sebastian and his partner Derek. They said they were in the neighborhood and wanted to discuss some exciting opportunities for my business. I felt a cold anger settle in my chest. What kind of opportunities? They claimed they could provide integrated marketing and investment services that would be more cost-effective than my current arrangements. But Felix, they knew details about my business that I've never shared with anyone outside my core team. What kind of details? Specific revenue projections, planned product launches, even internal discussions about expanding into new markets. Information that would have had to come from someone with access to our strategic planning documents. Documents that I'd helped Jennifer develop as part of our consulting relationship. Documents that existed only in my files and hers. Jennifer, I need you to know that I've never shared any of your confidential information with anyone. If Morrison Lund has access to your strategic plans, they didn't get them from me or my team. I know that. That's why I'm calling. The whole situation felt wrong, and I started wondering how they could have gotten that information. I was wondering the same thing. Elin had never had direct access to my client files, but she'd been in my apartment and office countless times over 3 years. She'd seen documents on my desk, overheard phone conversations, been present during some video calls when clients discussed sensitive information. What did you tell them? I told them I wasn't interested and asked them to leave. But Felix, they were pretty persistent. Derek made some comments about how the tech consulting market was becoming increasingly competitive and how businesses needed to make sure they were working with financially stable partners. He questioned my financial stability? Not directly, but the implication was clear. They were trying to create doubt about your ability to continue providing service. This was beyond unethical competition. This was a coordinated attack on my business reputation using confidential client information. Jennifer, would you be willing to document what happened? Write down everything you remember about their visit and what they said? Of course. Are you planning to take legal action? I'm planning to make sure they understand that their tactics have consequences. After Jennifer hung up, I called Maya. We need to accelerate our timeline, I told her. They're not just targeting my clients anymore. They're actively trying to undermine my business relationships using confidential information. What do you want me to do? I want you to compile everything we have on Morrison Lund investments, client complaints, financial records, business practices, everything. And I want you to create a comprehensive report that documents their pattern of unethical behavior. Are you planning to go public with this? I'm planning to make sure their current and potential clients have access to complete information about who they're dealing with. Felix, that's a nuclear option. Once you publish something like that, there's no going back. They made that choice when they decided to use my confidential client information to attack my business. That afternoon, I received the call I'd been expecting. Felix, it's Elin. We need to meet, today. My office, 4 o'clock. And Elin, bring Sebastian and Derek. This conversation involves all of you. Those are my terms. Take them or leave them. She was quiet for a moment. Fine. I will be there at 4. I spent the next 2 hours preparing for what I expected would be the final confrontation. Maya compiled our research into a comprehensive presentation, complete with documented evidence of Morrison Lund's business practices and client complaints. Oscar arrived at 3:30 to provide moral support and witness whatever was about to happen. Are you sure about this approach? He asked as we reviewed the materials. I'm sure that I'm not going to let them destroy my business while pretending to be the victims. At exactly 4 o'clock, Elin, Sebastian, and Derek arrived at my office. Elin looked nervous, Sebastian looked angry, and Derek looked like he was preparing for war. Thank you all for coming, I said, as they settled into chairs around my conference table. I think it's time we had an honest conversation about what's been happening. Felix, Elin began, I want you to know that I never intended for things to get this complicated. But they did get complicated, I replied, and now we need to deal with the consequences. Sebastian leaned forward. Look, Felix, maybe we got off on the wrong foot. There's no reason we can't all coexist in the same market. You're right, there isn't. But coexistence requires ethical business practices and respect for confidential information. Derek spoke up. We've never used any confidential information in our business development activities. I opened my laptop and projected Maya's presentation onto the wall screen. Let's review the evidence. For the next 20 minutes, I walked them through a detailed timeline of their activities. Screenshots of social media posts, documented client contacts, and specific examples of confidential information that had been used in their sales pitches. By the time I finished, Elin was pale, Sebastian was sweating, and Derek's confident demeanor had completely evaporated. This is all circumstantial, Derek said, but his voice lacked conviction. Is it? Because I have signed statements from 3 of my clients documenting specific confidential information that was shared during your sales presentations, information that could only have come from someone with inside access to my business relationships. I looked directly at Elin. Information that you provided. I never, she started, then stopped. We both knew she had. Here's what's going to happen, I continued. You're going to cease all contact with my current clients. You're going to focus on building your own legitimate business relationships instead of trying to steal mine, and you're going to do it without using any information obtained through personal relationships. And if we don't? Sebastian asked. I clicked to the final slide of the presentation. Then, this comprehensive report on Morrison Lund Investments' business practices gets shared with every potential client in the city, along with documented evidence of your use of confidential information and unethical competitive tactics. Derek stood up abruptly. This is blackmail. This is consequences, I replied. You chose to escalate this situation. Now you get to choose how it ends. Elin looked at Sebastian and Derek, then back at me. Felix, please, can't we find some middle ground here? The middle ground was when I asked you to stop targeting my clients. You chose to escalate instead. Sebastian finally spoke up. What do you want from us? I want a written agreement that you'll cease all contact with my current clients and stop using confidential information in your business development activities. I want you to focus on building your own legitimate market presence without interfering with my business relationships. And in exchange? In exchange, this stays between us. No public reports, no shared documentation, no interference with your ability to build a legitimate business. Derek and Sebastian exchanged glances. They were trapped, and they knew it. We need time to consider this, Derek said. You have until tomorrow morning. After that, the offer expires and the information becomes public. They filed out of my office without another word. Elin lingered for a moment. Felix, I'm sorry. I never meant for it to go this far. But it did go this far, Elin, and now we all have to live with the consequences. She nodded and left. Oscar whistled softly. Well, that was thorough. Think they'll agree? They don't have much choice. You've got them completely cornered. The next morning, I received an email from Derek Morrison containing a signed agreement to cease all contact with my clients and a commitment to focus on their own market development without using confidential information. It was over. But as I sat in my quiet office, looking out at the city where Elin and Sebastian were probably planning their next move, I realized that winning felt different than I'd expected. I'd protected my business and held them accountable for their actions. But in the process, I'd become someone I barely recognized, calculating, ruthless, willing to destroy other people's reputations to protect my own interests. Maya knocked on my office door. How are you feeling about how this all turned out? I thought about her question for a long moment. I'm feeling like I learned something important about myself. What's that? That I'm much better at this game than I ever wanted to be. Outside my window, the city continued its daily rhythm, full of people pursuing their own ambitions and protecting their own interests. Somewhere out there, Elin was probably telling herself that she'd been the victim in all of this. Sebastian was probably planning his next business venture, Derek was probably looking for new ways to leverage his family money, and I was sitting in my office, having won a war I'd never wanted to fight, wondering what that victory had cost me. But my business was safe, my clients were protected, and the people who'd tried to destroy what I'd built had learned that actions have consequences. Sometimes that has to be enough. The phone rang. A potential new client, referred by Jennifer Walsh. I answered on the second ring. Felix Roard Consulting. How can I help you? Life went on. Business continued. And I was still standing. That would have to be victory enough.